Beautiful. We are back and it's time for us to have a look at the newspapers. We'll be starting off today with the Daily Nation, their top story being why U.S. envoy resigned. So Silicon Valley billionaire Meg Whitman yesterday announced her resignation as the U.S. ambassador to Kenya, ending her 2-year stint in the country in a tenure during which she pleased and annoyed in equal measure. Her critics, who accuse her of causing up to Ruto's Kenya Kwanza administration, have welcomed the move, as well as the Donald Trump ascendancy back to the White House. This is a story on page 3. Of course, there have been an uproar even in social media and on X. Kenyans on X definitely were loud about it. And I see here Miss Megan Whitman saying, like all U.S. ambassadors, I serve at the request of the president. The American people have spoken and a new president will be inaugurated in January. So exiting U.S. ambassador arrived in Kenya just a week to the 2022 polls and has had it rough with opposition leaders and right activists. This is a story on page 3. And actually, Dr. Ruto was granted a state visit to the U.S. in May, signaling the close ties between the two countries. And page 2, nominated Murang'a MCA Wainaina dies in hospital. Very, very sad this morning. Family says ward rep died of pulmonary complications after being admitted last week. So it is with profound sadness that we as the Murang'a County Assembly mourn the passing of Mr. Wainaina. He was not only a committed leader, but also a friend and pillar of strength to many of us. This is from Murang'a Speaker Johnson Mukuha. And I see still on page 2, farmhand accused of killing elderly employer over 7,000 shillings. This is very sad. So on the morning of November 10th, Maureen Chanzu, a house help working for a retired civil servant in Jothaini Kasarani, was preparing to leave her employer's house for her weekly off. So we see here that Chanzu had woken up early to prepare breakfast for her boss, Catherine Washeke Kimotho, who was 78. And at around 9 a.m., as she was about to leave, she decided to check on her boss, whom she believed was still asleep in her room, knocked the bedroom door numerous times, but there was no response. And of course, that now was found to be on Tuesday afternoon. Detectives from the DCI Crime Research and Intelligence Bureau in Nairobi made a breakthrough in the search of the missing suspect, and that is Victor Ambanyi, who has been accused of killing that elderly woman who was 78 years old, over 7,000 shillings. Look at that story on page 2. That is on the Daily Nation. And on the top page still, another story here is ignored red flags and SHIF mess. So I see here that pleas for more time to fine-tune systems, postponement of the rollout date twice, last-minute leadership changes, and the abrupt disenabling of a scheme operational for nearly 6 decades are some of the ignored red flags that have birthed the chaos in the government's new health plan. Of course, the question many are asking is, since they decided to roll this out, why were all these problems not taken care of, and why discontinue NHIF before SHIF actually becomes reliable? So I see a day after the government suspended Mr. Elijah Washira as the Chief Executive Officer of the Social Health Authority, SHA, which manages the Social Health Insurance Fund, SHIF, multiple interviews have exposed the series of missteps that ultimately led to the messy rollout of the new system that has caused patients untold suffering. This is a story on page 4 and also 5. And moving on, I see page 12, KCSE exams come, how detectives trailed and seized key suspect. That's a story on page 12. And then we have still on the top page, page 7, bungled cases against Devani and Maina Njega among 1,000 dropped by DPP. Page 6 today is fresh round of performance contracts for Ruto ministers and also PSs. And we continue to get into the county news as well. And the counties today, counties starved of cash as MPs eye hefty roads budget. So there is a deadlock after committee failed to agree on amount to be given to devolved units. Ali Roba, Mandera senator here, saying the Senate is not about to take on an assignment that suggests we are allied with governors. This is a story on page 19, and that is the county news. More county news in Nyandarua is the county that bakes cake for others to eat. This is a story on page 20. Siaya, 7 suspects in Wells Fargo boss murder arrested. And still on the county news, Ngilu wins 3-year court battle over 150 million shilling land occupied by squatters. So that is a story on the former Kitui Governor Charity Ngilu. Moving on to the DN2 property this day, to rent or to buy, with average construction cost having jumped up by close to 20% over the past 5 years. Not many Kenyan families have been able to afford units under the affordable housing scheme. A story on pages 22 and also 23 that is on the DN2 property, and it's helping us to understand why affordable rental houses, not ownership, could be the solution to Kenya's housing problem. Studies have shown that children whose parents have less financial housing burdens benefit from better nutrition. So housing is a fundamental human need, yet housing and affordability continues to be a major issue in the country, with many Kenyan families unable to buy or build their own homes. A story on pages 22 and also well covered on page 23 as well. On the international news, we see Musk to lead efficiency drive in government. On the business today, we have state farms treasury-backed loans default hit 266 billion. So Kenya Railways leads the pack of agencies yet to start making their repayments. This is Eldoret residents' petition over high water tariffs as well. That's a story on the business, page 26. And coming to the back page, Treasury on the spot, over 2.3 billion tax fraud. Taxpayers could lose 4.82 billion as a result of exemptions granted to private firms. A story on the back page. Moving on, I see page 35. The Stars men coach Firat has put his trust in from over 50 players tried in 3 years. A select few have established their team status. Page 34, why Brazilian coach Neiva had to leave Gor Mahia is a story covered on page 34. Internal fight. Tifud players, dissatisfied fans contribute to his exit as well. And still on page 34, Chepngetich to attack her world marathon record next year. And that's it for the Daily Nation. And coming down to the Standard, just briefly, I see the top story here. Shockwave of Trump's re-election hits home. And of course, that's a story that has also been covered in the Daily Nation as well. Still on the Standard, MPs up in arms over the chaotic rollout of Shift. Still a story that we see on the Daily Nation. Then we see Kalonzo in talks with Gachagua. If you're asking yourself, what is the conversation about? Page 5 is where you get that story on the Standard. Then still on the top page, Trump's stunning choices. World page 23, look at that. Then don't write us off yet, says Stars. That is on page 40. And that is the sports page. I see here a story, promotion boost for 5,600 teachers. Employer TSC says mass promotion for both primary and secondary school tutors who have stagnated in the same job group is expected to raise the number of those elevated in the last 5 years to 76,690. A story on page 2. And climate talks, Kenya secures wins in Baku. So Denmark to shell out 9 billion to drive private investment in solar, wind and green infrastructure projects, contributing to Nairobi's goal of becoming a leader in sustainable energy. That's a story on pages 6 and also 7. Page 12, impeachment, Nyandarua MCA's train site on governor. And also top page still, Mount Kenya elders, professionals war chest against Ruto. A group of Kikuyu elders, lawyers, youth and professionals met in Nairobi to raise 100 million shilling to finance for former DP Rigathi Gachagua cases and barrage of other litigation to block Ruto's multi-billion projects. That's a story on page 9. The back page, the sports page, is that story of Akumu, and I see Kenya face Zimbabwe tomorrow at Peter Mokaba Stadium in South Africa. Midfielder Akumu believes Harambee Stars can make it to AFCON 2025. Page 39, England cringe at the thought of being extra. England's UEFA Nations League promotions hopes hit by series of withdrawals. And page 38, Kenya Simbas change tack as they go hunting in Kampala. Coach Powerwater calls for discipline ahead of rematch against Uganda. One change, two new faces as Simba squad named for Elgon Cup decider. And closing us off is the Business Daily, and the top story here, suspect in 1.5 billion equity heist arrested from China. So John Karima Wainaina says to have escaped to China in July. Detectives use phone, social media chats to track him. Still on the top page, I see KRA raids Chinese cigarette marketers in tax fraud probe. That's the story on page 2. Page 9 has a quote here by Bitangen Demo. African governments should consider establishing rapid response market intelligence teams. The back page is beyond reporting to a catalyst for growth. We are seeing here the reporting requirement remains a powerful tool that delivers win-win solutions for the environment and the farms in the long run. And here, poet T.S. Eliot saying most of the trouble in the world is caused by people wanting to be important. That's a very, very accurate quote right there, because humility is what we lack in most places, and people wanting to be important is what pushes them to do whatever in the name of power. But that is the last word, and thank you so much for staying through even as we were going through the newspapers. Now you are on the know, but tune into Hope FM. At the top of every hour we have some good news updates for you even as they happen throughout the day. And right here at Hope TV we have DIRA at 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. we have News Watch. So let's take a short break even as we have a look at the video of the day.